Have you ever had the want to simply vanish at some point? Not physically vanish, but break the unseen bonds that hold you to particular people, locations, and standards? You may have already completed this task. He may have departed with little explanation, assuming that his absence would be self-evident. However, what takes place on the opposite side? When people discover you're no longer there, how do they truly feel? There may be more to the answer than meets the eye. There is more than a void in your absence. It's a mirror, and in it those who are left behind see not just how much you are missed, but also all of the things they have long avoided. According to Carl Jung, we project onto other people what we find unacceptable about ourselves. This implies that people frequently fail to recognize you for who you are. They believe that you must be with him. Additionally, the reflection breaks as you go away. Because of this, some people become angry, some become sad, and some appear as though they don't care. But in their hearts, they're feeling something they can't even describe. Because you're not the only one involved. It concerns them. Let's investigate that emotion today. Let's examine how the seemingly straightforward act of leaving may elicit such deep and surprising responses. This will not be a pleasant trip, so prepare yourself. However, this discussion is for you if you have ever had to put distance between you and yourself in order to discover who you are, or if you have ever felt the weight of a relationship that no longer made sense. Ever notice how certain people seem to be seeking approval all the time, as though every decision required permission from someone, as though one's identity was contingent upon the existence or acknowledgement of others? This problem is more widespread than it may appear, and it is closely related to the challenges of moving away. In actuality, a lot of people are unaware of who they are when they are alone themselves. Their relationships with friends, family, co-workers, and partners serve as the foundation for their identity construction. However, what occurs if you choose to leave the scene? What occurs if someone who has always been there decides to leave? The same parts of the brain linked to physical pain are activated when people fear loneliness, according to social psychology research. According to a 2015 University of Chicago study, social rejection and isolation cause molecular reactions that resemble actual injuries. To put it another way, separation causes physical pain in the body, in addition to emotional distress. All of this, however, has a deeper meaning. Many people are unaware of how much other people's presence affects their emotional stability. They act as mirrors in their lives, reflecting feelings and expectations that are not always their own. The issue? This reflection vanishes when you step back. What's left? The actual path to self-knowledge begins at this point. Who am I without others? Is the question that many people dread when they choose to stand back and stop relying on others for emotional support. The solution does not appear right away. We are accustomed to the non-stop cacophony of requests, views, and notifications in today's culture. It can be frightening to be silent. However, the truth resides there. Philosophers like Seneca previously supported this in ancient Rome. Solitude should be welcomed as a means of achieving inner harmony and mental clarity rather than being shunned, and that lesson still holds true today. According to a 2021 study that was published in the journal Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, people who often spend time alone are more creative and emotionally resilient. Why? Without other influences that skew our sense of who we truly are, detachment enables a closer relationship with oneself. As a result, retreat is a necessary step for those who want emotional autonomy, rather than a sign of rejection or selfishness. Understanding that some relationships merely serve to keep us trapped with outdated versions of ourselves is a better way to distance oneself than severing ties out of retaliation. And perhaps this is the main idea. If you feel the desire to relocate, it could be because you no longer identify with your current location. The issue still stands. Are you prepared to find your true self without requiring approval from others? Ever pondered why certain individuals find it so hard to cope with your absence? Why do some people react with sadness, some with rage, and some with attempts to instill guilt when you leave? It's not just that they miss you that causes this. The true cause is more profound. A lot of people are unable to distinguish between emotional reliance and affection. When a person bases their happiness on the approval and presence of another, this is known as emotional dependency. She depends on other people to maintain her psychological stability, rather than developing a strong, autonomous identity. That person loses equilibrium when that support is removed, which occurs when you move away. Contrary to appearances, this is increasingly frequent. About 30% of adults show some level of emotional reliance in their interpersonal interactions, according to a 2018 study published in the Journal of Personality Disorders. This indicates that loneliness is not just uncomfortable for many people, but also frightening. However, what actually occurs when you choose to leave someone's life? This brings us to a key idea in analytical psychology: psychological projection. One of the greatest minds in history, Carl Jung, emphasized that we tend to see others as we need them to be, rather than as they truly are. Projecting our deepest wishes, anxieties, or insecurities onto another person is a process known as projection. Consider a person who fears being abandoned, but is unwilling to confront that emotion. Rather, this individual imposes the duty of constant presence on you. This illusion lasts as long as you are present. However, the instant you step back, the reaction fails, forcing her to confront her own emotional vulnerability, which she has been avoiding. This clarifies why some people find it difficult to accept their decision to leave. For them, it's about breaking a psychological barrier that kept them from confronting their own inner issues, not just about losing your business. There are numerous ways that emotional reliance can show up, some of which are more subtle than others. Certain individuals attempt to coerce you into being in the moment by saying things like, "I don't know what I would do without you. Are you abandoning me? After everything I've done for you, this is how I repay you." These words are not always spoken intentionally or malevolently. They frequently indicate the individual's incapacity to manage their own emotional independence. According to contemporary psychology, the only effective strategies for overcoming this kind of dependence are the growth of emotional intelligence and self-worth. People who concentrate on their self-confidence and self-responsibility have happier and more resilient relationships. According to a 2020 Stanford University study, this happens because they discover how to ask for help from others without letting this desire develop into a harmful addiction. Why do you think this is so important to understand? You now know why if you've ever left someone and thought they overreacted. It wasn't about you, it was about her. This person was compelled to confront latent problems after his removal. Additionally, it is imperative that you complete this reflection as well. Are you emotionally dependent on somebody in your life? When someone leaves you, do you feel lost or upset? Am I building my happiness on my own foundation or on the presence of someone else? Is a question that may need to be asked if this is the case. Learning to be whole on your own is the first step to building connections that are genuine and healthy. You may be completely free when you don't have to rely on anyone to validate you or project your fears onto other people. After all, bearing the burden of someone else's expectations is not your job. If someone reacts negatively to your absence, it could be because they never saw you as a self-sufficient individual, but rather as a mirror of their own unmet needs. Have you ever experienced the deafening power of silence? That the weight of someone's absence can be greater than that of their presence? This occurs because emptiness is the disclosure of what was concealed, not only the absence of something. Denial is frequently the first response of those who remain when you decide to walk away. The individual attempts to persuade themselves that their presence was never necessary and that their departure makes no impact. However, something changes with time. Although it is now empty, the area you occupied is still there. Furthermore, gaps are extremely difficult for the human mind to process. According to neuroscience research, the human brain is wired to steer clear of unfamiliar situations. According to a 2019 Columbia University study, uncertainty triggers the activation of brain regions associated with stress and anxiety. This explains why an unplanned departure can cause a flurry of emotions that are hard to comprehend. Emptiness hurts not only when people are alone, but also when they are forced to face their loneliness. Distractions stop when someone who has always been present leaves. What's left are the individual's own thoughts, anxieties, and insecurities that were before muffled by the other's presence. The person begins to doubt who they are as a result of this absence. If that person is gone, what is left of me? Why does this bother me so much? One of two outcomes may result from these inquiries. Either the individual grows up and learns to manage their feelings, or they become even more resentful and denial-prone. Fascinatingly, Memories are frequently distorted by the mind after someone leaves. There are two possible outcomes. Idealization. Even when the relationship was not always peaceful, the other person starts to view you as flawless, indispensable, and irreplaceable. Demonization. A story that portrays you as unjust, self-centered, or harsh for leaving is made up to lessen the hurt. This occurs as a result of the brain trying to find an explanation for the discomfort. If loss causes pain, then something significant must have been lost. If not, there must be a culprit to excuse the suffering. Even if it hurts, emptiness has the capacity to transform. Researchers examined the effects of loneliness on personal development in a 2021 study that was published in the Harvard Business Review. They discovered that absence significantly increases emotional development and self-analysis. This implies that, though absence can initially be painful, it can also serve as the catalyst that someone needs to start rebuilding themselves in a more genuine manner. Many people don't realize who they really are until they lose someone or something that used to occupy too much of their lives. As a result, despite how terrible absence is, it also has the unspoken ability to highlight what is truly important. Some will become disoriented amid the emptiness. Others will discover how to fill it with something fresh and possibly more accurate. The question still stands: what does your absence show about other people? And what has the absence of others revealed in you? Few people are able to handle the weight of silence. It is more than just the lack of sound. There is an unseen presence as well, a place where suppressed feelings arise and incomplete thoughts reverberate. When you decide to go, people notice more than just your absence. More powerful than any words is the quiet you leave behind. The foundation of human communication is the continuous flow of words, glances, and gestures. An interruption of this dynamic causes the mind to become restless. What seems certain suddenly becomes uncertain. Why did this individual leave? What does this signify? Did I make a mistake? The same parts of the brain associated with dread of the unknown are activated when there is no reaction, according to research on social behavior. According to a 2020 University of London study, those who experience extended quiet during social interactions experience higher degrees of anxiety than those who receive a negative response. Stated differently, the absence of a definitive conclusion is more upsetting than a frontal conflict. Why does silence feel so awkward? Quietness is a reflection. It compels one to face emotions and ideas that were previously concealed by day-to-day encounters. Because it makes them look inward, and what they find isn't always pleasant. Some individuals find it intolerable when someone leaves without giving a reason. You deny the other person the opportunity to steer the conversation when you choose not to respond, debate, or defend your absence. She is unable to misrepresent the facts, read your mind, or control your feelings. The only thing left is emptiness, and what that emptiness tells us about her. Thus, silence turns into a potent tool for communication. He answers without having to debate and says without having to explain. Furthermore, it frequently has a significantly bigger impact than any in-depth justification could. People only truly appreciate something until they lose it, which is an intriguing aspect of human nature. This idea, which is closely linked to the concept of scarcity bias, which illustrates our propensity to value more that which is less readily available, is extensively researched in behavioral psychology. People grew accustomed to your frequent presence and availability. However, withdrawing leaves a void in your presence. The other person is forced to acknowledge the influence of their presence because it is no longer there, which might lead to introspection or animosity. Silence is not an indication of weakness. Instead, it is an expression of inner power and emotional control. Impulsive responses, requests for justifications, or attempts to persuade someone of your worth only give them more power. However, you establish a clear barrier when you decide to remain silent. My presence is a choice, not an obligation, and that makes all the difference. Because ultimately, being absent will always have a greater effect than being compelled to be present. No explanation will ever be as terrible as silence, and even if they don't acknowledge it, the message will reach the person who needs to hear it. Few people can comprehend the impact of absence until they have gone through it themselves. Not only are you leaving the scene when you decide to leave, but you're also leaving a space for others to deal with what's left. A new sense of self, progress, and transformation will be able to fill this space for some people. Some, on the other hand, may object, attempting to hold you responsible for their unease. However, the way someone responds to your absence ultimately matters more about them than it does about you. We can learn from this journey that not all relationships are meant to last. Some only live for a limited period of time, either to impart knowledge or to reveal our true selves. Learning to appreciate your own company is more important in life than gaining more presences. In actuality, leaving is a right and not a sign of weakness or selfishness. The freedom to decide where to focus your efforts, and the freedom to avoid acting as an anchor for others who are unwilling to go it alone. And if someone is really affected by your departure, it could be because you were the only thing keeping them from confronting themselves for a long period. Therefore, what other people think when you are gone is not the most important question. Who do you become when you decide to leave? That is the true question.